All right.
What's tonight's topic?
I'm glad you asked. I was just about to say, appointment? Yeah, appointment. We're going to talk a little bit about the Parsha, and then a little bit about Chanukah. It's the last night of Chanukah, but the last day of Chanukah, Zos Chanukah, is a very powerful day. There's even more holiness in the last day of Chanukah than the rest of the day, so we should still definitely talk about Chanukah, because all the things that we learned and did over Chanukah, we should take with us for the rest of the year. It doesn't just end today. But first, the Parsha. Some important things in the Parsha. Mikeitz Yosef, the selling of Joseph. We're in the middle of that. So just to refresh our memories, what happened, Yosef's brothers were jealous of him, and they sold him into slavery, and he winds up in Egypt. He winds up as a slave to Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife wants to have her way with him and tries to seduce him, and he valiantly resists. So she makes up libelous accusations against him, and he gets thrown in jail. Not the first time that someone's tried to... it happened back then also. So he was in jail. It seemed like a horrible situation. Yaakov was in mourning for his son for 22 years. Son's kidnapped. He thinks his son might be dead. His son's dead. It's a horrible, horrible situation. If you would picture yourself in that situation, there's people experiencing that now. That's only a few months, and how horrible that is. But this was 22 years. You look at the situation, that it was just a horrible thing. You can't understand how could it be that this could happen. The Mikeitz Chanukah gives a parable. He says, imagine you go out of town, travel to an out-of-town city, maybe a Hawaiian island with some random Chabad, and you go into that shul, and you're at shul, and you get ready for the Torah reading, and you see there's a lot of very important people there. There's a lot of very important rabbis, a lot of wealthy donors to yeshivas and synagogues, and you're a guest, you should get an aliyah. And what do you see? They give some weird-looking guy an aliyah. They give another guy who doesn't look so important an aliyah. They give this other guy who definitely doesn't look like a Torah scholar. He's holding the siddur upside down. All these people get aliyahs. And you didn't get an aliyah. You're a guest. You should have gotten one. This big rabbi didn't get an aliyah. This wealthy guy didn't get an aliyah. He practically supports the place. So you look at it what? What's going on? So you go complain to the gabbai. You say, how could you do this? This is not no way to run a shul. This is who you give aliyahs to. So the gabbai says, you don't come here every week. You're a guest. He says, last week this rabbi got an aliyah, and that rabbi got an aliyah. This person here, he had a bris. This person here just made a simcha. He got an aliyah. This person has a yard site this week. He got an aliyah. You don't know the situation. You just come here for a week. You expect to understand everything that's going on. So we would love to give you an aliyah, but there weren't enough. All the people that had to get, and all the important people got last week. So Mikeitz Chanukah says that's our lives. So we're here for 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, 120 years on earth. You look at situations that happen in our lives. Look, this is a horrible situation. How could this be? This is not fair. But he says, we're only guests here for a short period. We don't have the whole context of human history, of Jewish history. When you look at the whole context of human history, then you realize that what seemed to be this horrible thing is really part of Hashem's bigger plan. It's kind of even cliche to say that God has a plan, but it's true. There's a reason it's a saying. It's true. We're learning Sunday mornings Das Tfunos, which is a sefer. The whole sefer is really about how the entire history of existence is Hashem is orchestrating things behind the scenes, that people should come to the awareness that there is one God and He's in control and He runs everything. That's the whole purpose of creation. So all the bad things that happen are to demonstrate to humanity different things that people put their faith in that don't work. For example, I always bring this example, but people put their faith in communism. They thought communism would save the world because there'll be equality in the economic system, and that'll bring a utopian society. Everything will be great. And we know that definitely didn't happen, that people just took advantage of other people. So people don't have their faith in that anymore. Communism is off. Then they put their faith in other things, other isms, wokeism, this and that. We see things like that crumbling. Eventually, you go through all these things, people realize that the only being that we can put our faith in, the only thing we can put our faith in is God, is Hashem. So all of human history is just bringing us to that point where we recognize that Hashem is one. So these horrible things that happen when we look around the world, we're looking at it from our very narrow perspective. We're like that guest who came to the shul for 1 week. We don't understand the entire context. If we would understand the entire context, we would understand why that guy has to be poor, why that guy had to lose his job, why that guy is sick, why this person had to die. We would understand what would be going on if we understood the spiritual reasons behind everything. It doesn't make it easy. It's still hard. Yaakov had a heart-wrenching 22 years. His son wasn't there. That was a horrible experience. But in the end of the day, let's look what happened. Because Yosef was there, he became the viceroy. He was able to bring his family down, take care of his family, provide food for the entire world around that area because he knew a famine was coming, so he saved food. And then not only that, but it brought the cause of the Jewish people to come to Egypt, which eventually caused the Exodus and the giving of the Torah. And all of that wouldn't have happened had Yosef not been sold into slavery. So while at the time it seemed like this horrible calamity, it really was for the good. But again, that doesn't mean that it was great when it was happening. It was a difficult, trying experience. So it does help, though, to have that in mind when horrible things happen, that there is a bigger plan. So while Fiddler on the Roof is my favorite musical, it really has horrible, horrible messages. The song is good. One thing Tevye says, would it ruin some vast eternal plan if I were a wealthy man? Yeah, it would. There's a reason Tevye had to be poor. There's a reason. Hashem made it that whatever challenges, Tevye had to be put into a situation where he was a poor person to overcome those specific challenges. Right? God didn't give him the challenge of being wealthy. The Mesilas Yesharim says, he says every situation a person is in his life is a challenge. So a rich person has his challenges and a poor person has their challenges. And he says even that the rich person, it seems that his challenges are even greater. Because when you're rich, first of all, you put your faith in yourself. I'm very successful, I'm very powerful, I have all this money. And it's very easy to become lazy and not do what you're supposed to do. Yeah, I don't feel like learning Torah right now. I don't feel like doing mitzvahs. I don't need God. I'm fine with myself. It's a real big challenge. It's hard. And since the whole purpose of our lives is to get closer to Hashem, to fulfill His mitzvahs, and live a spiritual life, that is a very, very serious challenge. Now, being poor is also a challenge. But we only tend to relate sometimes, I think most of us tend to relate to the challenge of poverty versus the challenge of wealth. Okay, so that's one thing about Yosef. Now, an interesting thing about Yosef, first of all, how are we supposed to live our lives in general? I think we all know, right? No one in this room just sits at home and says, okay, God is going to provide me money so I can pay my mortgage and pay my bills and buy food. All right? Go, have a job, work for a living, provide for ourselves. None of us just sit, okay, I'm going to pray, and money is going to grow on the tree, and money is going to come to me. So we don't do that. So we go to work, we put in our effort. So the question is that Yosef was punished, that he had to spend another 2 years in jail. Why was he punished? Because he was a cellmate of the cupbearer. When the cupbearer was released from jail, he said, please remember me.
Wasn't the cupbearer and the baker?
And a baker, right. The baker didn't end up so well for him. He, dead man walking, Green Mile. But the cupbearer, he was released. So when he's getting out, he's getting on parole, Yosef says, hey, remember me, remember your friend inside. And because he did that, he was punished to spend 2 more years in jail.
What was so bad about that?
Exactly. He was doing what he's supposed to do. Wouldn't we do the same thing?
Yeah.
If we're what's his name was it when there's Jewish people in jail, we say, oh, you know someone who knows a senator who knows someone who could maybe get a pardon. We do everything we can to get the person out of jail. So what did Yosef do that was so bad? Or was it? There's also that story I like. I heard this from Rabbi Shor, but it was also on The West Wing, which happens to be the best television show that ever was written, in my opinion. You never saw The West Wing? You never saw The West Wing?
Is that with Kuiper Sutherland?
No, that was, I think, 24. The West Wing was on when I was in middle school and high school. It was...
what's his face wrote it? He wrote a lot of other good shows.
Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin. It's about the White House, the West Wing of the White House, starring Martin Sheen. He's the president.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like...
it's supposed to be a very good show.
It's the best show.
Really?
You should start watching it, or not, but don't start watching it.
He also did The Newsroom, which was on HBO.
Yeah.
That was a very good show.
Yeah, but so in the show, it's actually a priest comes to speak to the president. But what he tells him is true. I heard this from Rabbi Shor. Just like everything else, they probably took it from us. But he tells him there was a man, and I'm sure you've heard this before. His house was getting flooded. So they come by, the police come by, says, you have to evacuate, your house is getting flooded. He says, no, God will save me, praise to God. Water gets a little higher, a boat comes by, He says, come, we have to go. It's going to get flooded. He says, God will save me. God will save me. I have faith in God. And then he gets to hire a helicopter. And he says, no, God will save me. And then he dies. He goes to heaven and says, God, why didn't you save me? He says, what do you mean? I sent you the car. I sent you the boat. I sent you a helicopter. What do you want from me? Point is, we have to put in effort in our lives. It's called hishtadlus. So what in the world did Yosef do wrong? So first let's talk about the proper balance. It would seem the proper balance a Jew has to have is that we put in hishtadlus, but we also have bitachon. Now, hishtadlus means that we put in effort. We go through the motions to work. Now, how do we end up being successful and having enough money to support ourselves, having what we need? Really, it comes from Hashem. But Hashem made the world in a way that we have to put in the effort. We don't just sit on our laurels, and we don't just sit expecting everything to come to us. We have to put in the effort. But really, where does it come from? It comes from Hashem. Hashem is totally in control. What we do ultimately will have no bearing. If we put in the normal effort that's required from us, nothing else will have any bearing on whether we're going to be successful. Right? So, bitachon, belief in Hashem, or trust in Hashem, there's two things, emunah and bitachon. Emunah is just the belief. There is a God. Bitachon is a step further. Bitachon is that He controls everything. Einol milado, there's no other power besides Him. The fact that this table exists right now is only because Hashem right now wants it to exist. The fact that I get into a car accident because Hashem wanted that to happen to me. The other guy was drunk driving and he did something wrong. Yeah, but why did it happen that I was there at that moment? And Hashem wanted me to get hit by a drunk driver. Chas v'shalom. Right? Hashem is ultimately in charge. So again, what did Yosef do wrong? So there's two explanations here, which we can both apply to our lives. The Beis Halevi says the balance with these two things, bitachon and hishtadlus, is not the same for every individual. If you're a very holy person, me neither. If you're a very holy person like Aaron Oberher to my right, or Arnold, whatever you call him, you're expected to do less hishtadlus. You're expected to put in less effort than the average person. You are supposed to rely on Hashem more than the average person. The balance changes, right? You're not supposed to do the effort that a normal person puts in. You're supposed to put in less because you're so close to Hashem that you're supposed to live with that fact that Hashem will provide more for you. So even though a normal person should have asked the cupbearer for help, Yosef HaTzadik, he's called Yosef the Righteous, that's what we call him, Yosef HaTzadik. He was one of the 12 tribes. He was even a little bit holier than the 12 tribes because Ephraim and Menashe became the 12 tribes. So he's on a super holy level. He was on such a holy level that he should have just had faith in Hashem, that Hashem was going to save him. He didn't need to ask the cupbearer because he was on that level. And there are very holy people in recent years. As the discipler was known, he didn't like to take medicine. He wanted to daven to Hashem that he would be healed. He was on a very holy level. I mean, the discipler had Ruach HaKodesh. I know many people.
Christian scientist.
What?
Sort of like a Christian scientist won't take drugs either, or won't even see a doctor.
Right, so that's wrong because they're not. I mean, that's their whole, by definition that's wrong because that's their whole religion. They're telling everyone in their religion not to do that. We're saying on the contrary, 99.9999% of Jews are supposed to. That 0.00001% of those holy rabbis who've been learning Torah their entire lives and have Ruach HaKodesh. Rabbi Leiter can tell you stories when he met the disciple about his Ruach HaKodesh, where he had divine inspiration and he knew things. Rabbi Leiter told me the disciple read his mind. He told me, ask Rabbi Leiter about it. The disciple read his mind. He says he has no idea how he knew exactly what he was thinking. Some random thought. My Rosh Hashiva, Rav Aaron Feldman, told me similar stories about the discipler where he had prophetic visions of things. We're talking about people on a totally different plane of existence. Such people, they are supposed to have that extra level of bitachon and not put in the hishtadlus. That's where Yosef was.
Moshe did that too.
With what?
Moshe, did he hit the rock to try to get water out of it?
Right, he wasn't supposed to do that. He was supposed to speak to it.
Right, and he did that, and he didn't.
That's forced habit. He did that the first time.
Well, because he
didn't go into his own.
Right, that's part of being a holy person. Is that it says Hashem judges them like Yichut Asayra, very narrowly, very particularly. Since Hashem expects more from people that are on a higher level, like you know better, right? Like I wouldn't.
Was he considered when that was on the highest level?
Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu for sure was on the highest level of all time. So that's one explanation. The Chazon Ish has a different explanation. The Chazon Ish says that the butler was known to not be a trustworthy person. He says we're supposed to put in effort, but we're not supposed to do something which is desperate. We're not supposed to do. Asking a non-trustworthy person to help you is considered a desperate plea, right? This the cupbearer was not an asken, a professional who knew how to lobby Pharaoh. He was like a crazy guy. So asking him for help was an act of desperation. This applies to all of us. Since we have bitachon, we have faith that everything comes from Hashem, we are only supposed to do what normal people do in that situation. The rest, we trust in God. Really, all of it we trust in God. So if a person loses his job, what would a normal person do to find a job? He would call friends. He would maybe look on different websites. He wouldn't go buy lottery tickets to hope that he's going to make. That's an insane thing to do. He's so desperate he's buying lottery tickets because maybe he'll become a millionaire. Right? Okay, but not for that reason. Cause
to become a millionaire.
Yeah, but no. But you live in you're a little delusional. You think you're going to win, but whatever. If it makes you feel good, go for it.
You should win, Hashem.
If you win, though, I want 20%. So that's the idea. And this is always a question, right? This is always a question that you should speak to your rabbi about. Of, when should you put in the effort for something when you need to get something, and when should you say, okay, I did enough, the rest I'm going to trust in Hashem? That's always a question that you have to speak to other people, speak to holy rabbis and whatnot, and to do it. But the main thing is that we have to live with the belief that even though we are putting in our effort, we're working, we're doing whatever has to be done to accomplish our goals, the real success comes from Hashem. And that means that the focus of where we put our energies is different. Somebody who doesn't believe in Hashem, and he needs to become a millionaire, for whatever reason, he needs $1 million, he's going to do every crazy thing he can think of to get $1 million. Right? Let's say he needs to get $1 million to pay for a surgery, God forbid. Right? He's going to buy the lottery tickets, he's going to do harebrained schemes, and get money, get rich quick, try to do 15 million odd jobs, maybe rob a bank, do crazy things because he needs to get that money. But a Jew, who the main thing is, no, Hashem's in charge. He's going to do normal things. Maybe he'll take out loans, he'll work extra hours, but beyond that, he trusts in Hashem. So where's his energy going to go? Since he knows it's coming from Hashem, he's going to work. When's Hashem going to help him? Hashem's going to help him when he's being a better Jew. So he's going to work on his character traits. He's going to work on studying Torah. He's going to work on his fulfilling the mitzvahs properly, because Hashem is going to help him when he's fulfilling the mitzvahs. So while the person who doesn't have bitachon, he's going nuts and trying to do everything he can in the physical world and going crazy, like asking the cupbearer, the Jew is going to try to help his spiritual side. Okay, now a little bit about Chanukah. That was the parsha. So I've said this story many times, but I really like it because I think it has a lot to do about Chanukah. Well, first, it's interesting. The Greeks were called Choshech, darkness. Question is, why were the Greeks, specifically out of all the nations, a lot of nations that we've come across in our long history, Romans, Persians, Greeks, Babylonians, Assyrians. You don't hear much about the Assyrians anymore. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you have all these ancient cultures that were like, at the time, they were like America. They were like the most powerful nation, and like everyone wanted to be like them, like the Assyrians, but like nobody cares. They're just like gone. In the costume.
We've survived them all.
Yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, so why specifically are the Greeks called darkness? Right? All these other nations, they weren't so great either, right? The Egyptians were not so nice to us, but we don't call them darkness. So the answer is like this. Greece was different because they believed their philosophy and their values should replace Torah. The other nations, they didn't care. Do whatever you want, but they just fulfilled their desires. They fulfilled their taivas. They murdered. They stole. Committed adultery. All sorts of horrible sins, but they didn't have like a whole philosophy that it should replace Torah. Like, they didn't care. They just did what they wanted to. They were just bad people. The Greeks were different. They had a philosophy. No, we believe in culture. We have the Olympics, right? They used to compete in the Olympics naked, just to look at the beautiful male body, and they had Greek philosophy, which was supposed to replace Torah. Now, what's different about Greek philosophy and Torah? The difference is that the Greeks only believed in things that you could see and touch and feel and smell with the senses. They didn't believe in anything beyond that, in the spiritual. What you see is what you get. That was their philosophy. That philosophy was built on that assumption. So, which reminds me, this is the story, that Yuri Gagarin, on April 12, 1961, was the first man in space. So, after he came down, Khrushchev said that Gagarin flew into space but didn't see any God there. Right? That is the epitome of which was Soviet culture and Greek culture. That I can't see it, so it doesn't exist. Since I can't see it, it's not real. And that was what the Greeks believed. The Greeks believed that what's important is the physical body, is culture, is art, all these things. And they thought that was the purpose in life. And on Hanukkah, they tried to get us to assimilate, to be like them. That we should abandon the Torah, because the whole idea of Judaism, what we were talking about before, is the opposite of that. Is spirituality, is bitachon, is trust in Hashem, is getting close to God, is living beyond ourselves, is doing chesed, doing mitzvahs, things like that. So since they tried to replace Jewish culture, the Torah, with their culture, it's called darkness. And it's interesting that there was a group during Hanukkah. It wasn't just a war of Jews versus the Greeks. There were a group of people called Misyavnim. Misyavnim were people, Jews, that took on Greek ideals and took on Greek philosophy. And they were also battling the Jews. There was an element of the Jewish people that was saying, no, this should be a replacement for Torah. We want to participate in the Olympics. One of the things, interesting, the Greeks made the Jews do was play sports on Shabbos. That's one of the things they made them do. This is Misyavnim. So we have that, you see that in our generation, right? We have, what's it called? Jewish Voice for Peace. We have all these groups which they take every secular value that exists, every anti-Jewish value, and say, no, this is Judaism, right? Tikkun Olam, whatever it is. This is Judaism. Being against the state of Israel, that's Judaism, right? Coming out against Jews, that's Judaism. So, just to conclude, the Rav Leib Bach said, I think others say this also, that on Purim we have a Megillah. We read the whole story of Purim, from beginning to end. It's got a beginning and end. Hanukkah, there's no Megillah. We don't sit in shul and read the stories. So why is that? So the reason is because Purim had an ending. Haman got killed, the Jews were saved, but Hanukkah, it's not over. Because that battle between Greek culture and Jewish culture is still going on. Right? We still have, in this world, Jews that commit to the secular value. They say, there's no God, there's no supernatural, what you see is what you get, have perverted views of everything, and it's very enticing to the Jewish people. So the story's not over. Even every single Jew, even the most orthodox person, there's subtle messages constantly in the culture trying to get us to take on Greek values, these secular values. It's hard, right? But specifically, the way that it does that is by enticing us to say, what do you need spirituality for? What do you need God? Look at all the wonderful things you have in the world. There's art, there's culture, that's all there is. There's nothing beyond here. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. Right?
If I would have known this, I may not have gone to Greece on my honeymoon.
You know what the best thing to do is? Go to Greece.
Maybe Rome instead.
Go to Greece, but experience the beauty, and say, wow, look what Hashem made, and bring you to loving Hashem. That will stick it to the Greeks even more when you go to their country and do that. Yeah, but that's what we have to do for Hanukkah. Reconnect to the spirituality.
The towns on the mountains.